Okay, so the debate question is, should wealthy nations give aid to developing countries to alleviate poverty? So we'll go ahead and start with this team first. All right, go ahead for a second.
So yeah, so hello guys, my name is Parsa and my team represents the team that we are against wealthy countries giving aid to poor countries, and we're gonna explain you why. So poverty is absence. We assume that poverty is absence of economic resources, and developing countries should not give aid to poorer countries. We can use Africa as an example, and many countries that are located in Europe, like Finland, Denmark, France, that give lots of aid to the hottest continent. So, hottest continent in the world received $162 billion by the year of only in the year of 2015, but they had to give $200 billion back to the countries that they loaned money from. So, however, even it received $162 billion, no progress. The world didn't see no prog. The world didn't see any progress in African countries. So, we can use another example as China gave aid to Cambodia, as they gave $2.22 billion, and they also built train railways in Kenya, but we can't see any economical growth or alleviating the poverty in those countries. However, I think what China does from political standpoint, we can see that they are making countries in Africa biased. So whenever there are United Nations meetings, those countries like Cambodia, Kenya, that China give aid to, can choose China's side instead of choosing what they really want to do. Yep. Thank you guys.
Thanks. We'll go over to the person who went to the committee.
So, hello everyone, and I have a question for you. Did you know that over 3 billion people, which is 80% of the world, live on $10 per day or less? And our team is for aid. We're for rich countries giving aid to developing countries. Aid is important. By aid, we can provide help, save lives, and show that we care about other countries in the world that need help. And aid can save lives because it can provide medical support and education for children and for adults, because I don't think they're educated at all. And it can provide proper life for people in developing countries, because every person in the world deserves to have like basic needs. For example, clean water, medicine, education, and food. Um, Also, some people in Africa are trying to start a business by selling like fruits or any like natural resources that they have, but they don't have enough money to support their business. So simply by giving a loan, you can support their business and help them as a nation to come up with solution like to alleviate the poverty, and also the aid doesn't have to be just giving money to the government. Aid can be, as I said before, like loaning money to people who start their business, and there are many other ways we can help developing countries. Thank you.
All right, we'll open up for question and answer. Just about 2 minutes each team. So Salis, you can start. 2 minutes asking questions, about the other team responding.
But who asks question?
Celestine.
Okay.
Sasha, I have a question. What if the government is in corruption and you're giving the money in this country, but the government is actually in corruption? Where will this money go?
What?
She wants to ask a question. So, what if what if a wealthy country gives aid to a poor country, but that country's government is corrupt?
Is corrupt.
But I just said that you can lend money to like persons. Like you don't have to give it to the
Yeah, but it will go
like
to the government.
individuals. Like for example, on the website as we studied, like as we reviewed in our English class, the one the loan, the thing where you loan money to keep. Anyways, this website, and you can loan like $20, $25, and then get it like they return it. So it's not, you don't have to give money to the government, like, and they have to choose whatever like they want to do with it. You can give it to individuals in developing countries so they do their business.
Alright. Okay, we go over to the other team. Sasha's team, any questions?
I have a question for Parsa. So you said that the aid never helped developing countries, but it actually did. Because Mr. Bray told us that when he was in Africa, he actually saw some improvement from giving aid. And also, like, don't you think that if you continue, like, finding ways to help developing countries, like, will you ever be able to alleviate poverty?
I didn't say that there's no. I mean, I didn't say that it never helps. There's progress of alleviating poverty. However, I still believe that giving aid to poor countries doesn't make them sustainable at all, and makes them actually depend on the countries that give aid to. So, if if the wealthy country keeps giving aid to poor countries will depend on it, and I believe it's. But yeah,
So, you think it's better to be independable and poor and dying country than be dependable and wealthy?
But if you give once, they will get used to it and they will depend on wealthy countries, which can like prevent wealthy countries to get
develop themselves.
yeah.
If they can support themselves, how they gonna like support themselves without money? It's like they're dying and like living in extreme poverty. They don't have money to like change. They need money to change.
Yeah, true. But however, I said there's big amounts of money that have been invested in poor countries. But there's not that many progresses as the money was invested, because there are many reasons for that. Maybe the government is corrupt, the capital, or we have that. I guess I believe that people are not educated
They're
enough
poor
to
for
use
reasons.
Yeah.
Reasons that why.
There are so many ways that we can help, like give aid to a country and not make it independent from another country. And instead, like you make them independent. You know, like NGOs, there are non-governmental organizations. They educate people and they make them like, you know, they help them to create their own businesses and become entrepreneurs. So that's how you give aid. You like aid doesn't mean necessarily to give money directly to people, because if not, there's no effort from them. You know. Instead, you need to make them. You know, like you need to teach them how to make their own money.
True, but
And that's the aid.
however, what I believe that what the world experienced, but we never saw that happening in this world, and I didn't see any. At least I don't know any country that progressed that much by the help of the aid of wealthy countries.
I'll stop you guys there. Let's come on to person 3 from each team. And then we'll do 3, 3, and then we'll do 4, 5, 4, and 5, and then we'll go to another question and answer session. Thanks for those ideas.
if you are able to help other countries, why wouldn't you help first your country? So people think that it's helpful for rich people to help poor people, but we have to consider some points that the poor countries are poor for reasons. Either they don't have resources or the government is in corruption system. Example, as I read yesterday on an article that is coming from Washington Post, Egypt is a good example for that because it's a corrupting country which is developing countries, and for many years, U.S. helped to alleviate poverty, giving them $2 billion per year in order to help them to build resources, but unfortunately this foreign aid was spent by the military funding for Egypt, and the rest was like given to the not given but lined to Mubarak Hosni, who was the president of Egypt. I don't know if he's still now. And the way that this money was spent is a waste, and I think that it doesn't do any good for this country because many people are starving and they're living in poverty.
Should we go with person 3?
So, coming from a country that deals with major poverty issues that affect more than 50 million people, you start looking to this problem with a different perspective than the rest of the world. So, poverty becomes a consequence of a bigger issue, and developing countries need the investment with the aid and not the easy money. So, as I like to answer Parasad, there is a lot of different ways that the aid can be benefit to a developing country. Giving the easy money don't like make them like want to get better, like wants to work. You need to invest the money in the country with health care, good education, basic needs, water, food, and not giving to the money because developing countries normally deal with a lot of economic problems, like with corrupt government, and it's really bad for the country. So investing the money, you teach people to go in a different way than they are teaching in the country. So is aid good for developing countries? Yeah, but as I said, in all the different ways, building schools and hospitals and basic needs.
Okay, so let's go to person 4 and 5, then we'll do a question and answers after that. Claire, are you going to vote in your election this weekend? Are you going to vote in your election this weekend?
No, but I want to.
Okay, in the past 50 years, more than $1 trillion development related aid is transferred from rich country to poor country to help them. But it doesn't work, and it's even making the economic in those countries becoming worse. And the main reason is because of the corruption happening in Africa. Like most of the aid is transferring to Africa, so I'm using Africa as an example. And like I have a data shows like when the aid is transferring from rich nations to poor nations, when the aid is like increasing to go into the poor countries, but the actual GDP in the country is getting worse because they are relying on the aid and it's not working by themselves. And for a more specific example in Africa is Zambia. Like half of the Zambia's population is 70 million, and half of them are still living below the poverty line. So this shows like the aid is not working for the country to develop. And so I think sending aid to a poor country doesn't actually help them. You have to teach them how to fish, and they will. You have to teach them how to like earn their own money, and then they can make money by themselves and provide themselves anything they wanted. So that's a way to help them actually develop. Thank you.
So did you show it in the graph? You can pass it around if you want. Okay. Let's go into person 4 and 5 on Sasha's team.
A synonym, yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
A synonym of aid is to alleviate. And by giving aid to other countries, it means alleviating their situation of poverty. Aid to poor countries is to help them progress and develop. And there are so many ways to give aid, not only by giving money. Help can be given like by microfinance and also NGOs that are non-governmental organizations, that there are like non-profit organizations. And giving money, we know that it has not worked as well as other things, and because of corruption and mismanagement. But giving aid in general is not bad. Like, we need to find, just if one thing is not working, we need to find another way to help, like to make it work. And that's why, like, I'm just like naming some other options that we know that have worked around the world. And aid has helped to support other countries, like we know that for sure, like Africa, Egypt, and to get ahead and have a stable economy, and not to make them independent of a wealthy country. I'm gonna explain what NGOs are, like just a brief explanation. And basically, like NGOs are dedicated to help and support people from all around the world, to educate them and to help them make money by themselves. Like, I don't know, this NGO that is Kiva, they help with microfinance, and there are also many others that like go and teach people how to, like, and read, count, like basic things to get a job. And also there are organizations like the Red Cross that are not like, they don't help them financially, but they help them by giving them like health support, and they don't need to pay anything. Everything is just like very easy for them. It just like, it's a way that they're able to afford, or like, because sometimes they can have but very low prices, and they're able to reach, like to do that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Alexa. Okay, let's open it up for question and answer. Anyone from Sally's team? Go ahead, Shane.
So I have a question about Cuba from anyone that can answer. How do you know that people on Cuba are actually honest about their business? For example, I wrote, okay, I want to grow a corn farm, but then when I get the aid, I say, okay, let's start import some cocaine or things like that.
You never know if the person is telling the truth, but like you're not giving the money, you're loaning the money, so you're gonna receive the money you're helping someone, maybe they're being generous or not, but you're not,
Yeah.
like you don't know, but you're receiving the guarantee of the money back and you're helping the economy of the country. So it's the same as here, like in a
True. Okay, so I'm sorry, but true. But I also don't receive my money back after he was rounded up by cocaine. True, and like if the person is not genuine, right? It does not really help the economy of the country if you're doing some illegal business like with narcotics and stuff. So
Normally, people that use Cuba, because I read it in the website, because I had the same question, like, what if they're only lying? Like, even though you're gonna get your money back, what if they're lying and using it for another thing? And normally, people that use Cuba is people that go to any like organizations, and those organizations, like, you know, have all their information, have like everything about their personal things, and check it's, like kind of verified. So that's why it can, and we know that Cuba, it's actually, something that it's good.
yeah, you can never trust anyone.
Yes, but you need to, like, if you don't trust anybody, how are you gonna be able to help them? Like,
That's why you should help them.
eh?
That's why you should
I
help
think
them.
you should die. That they should die. Like
Yes.
you're here having a good life and then they're starving to death. But
I have a question.
I know, but people die every day.
Can
You
I
can't help
ask
everyone.
a question?
Yes, but
you're
you're
saying
saying
that
that
you
you
won't help
prevent.
anyone. You're saying like you shouldn't
Yes.
help anyone.
That's so
anyone.
I know, but how are you?
For example, I have a question for all of you. If you would be a kid in a developing country with like, your parents would have an income like you would live in extreme poverty, so like $2 per day. Like, would you want a developing country to help your family and like to help your country, or you would want to die and like people like you saying, I don't need help, they'll do it by themselves?
Yeah, but what if the government is in corruption? The money
Yeah,
goes
but
to
we
the
just
government.
have
other
ways
options.
to help
Yes.
the country, not giving it money.
Yeah, you can put the
most
microphone.
Yes,
You
you
can
can
just
fix
fix
it.
hospitals.
You
You
can
can manage medicine.
Yes.
You can manage. How can you
They
take
make
it around?
food, you can make water, you can help clean the water.
You just give
They
money.
You
really-
can help them like for maybe a couple of months, and they will still be in poverty after that.
Yes, or some money will help them for a couple of months, and then, but
That's why you need to teach people.
yes.
Yes, I agree.
That's how we should appreciate something to say too. Go ahead, go ahead.
No, I just want to say, like, sending money is the most popular way of aid transfer,
Yeah, but it's not working, so that's why we need to change
So that's
the
what
ways
want
to help the developing countries.
No, but it's
but
not just giving free money, as Clara said.
But that is the most common way.
No,
No,
Yeah,
but
but there are like some of the other ways are also like there. Okay, the common way is this, but like there are other non-governmental organizations that are trying to help the countries by like whatever their website, like loaning money or.
Yeah, but that is just a small part. It doesn't help the whole country.
Yeah, but like if people would care, they would like. I don't know. There should be like more.
But it won't help.
The things, the organizations, the non-government organizations should be more supported by other people and become more popular to help.
Okay, I think we should move on to the last section, 6 and 7 and 8. If we have a few more minutes at the end, we can ask some questions. So let's go on. I think it's Cheyenne.
I have a question, but
Like, I think Cuba has been, like, knowledge
You go up if you want to go up. Kind
Yeah.
of sinks down. Whenever you're ready, Cheyenne.
Okay. Did you know on average, since the day that developed countries started to giving aid to developing countries, the rate of corruption increased as well as rate of poverty. So the point that is noticeable is the fact that although it might seem unethical or unethical to ignore developing countries, but it's necessary to give them a chance that they can develop by their own, rather than just giving amount of money. Also, based on statistics, as well as my teammates mentioned, since the day that they received AIDS, corruption increases, especially on countries such as Zimbabwe. Uh, this in recent years they got so much AIDS, but they didn't have much improve in their economic. There are so many different ways that developing countries can help to developing countries. For example, using fair trade products rather than just giving aids. If countries ignored aid from the beginning, developing countries would have more improvement. Thus, it is important to stop giving aids. To be more accurate, uh, as Anna Clara mentioned, it's important to give them food and water, but why we just don't give them basis of that? For example, give them a form of agricultural rather than just give them food and water, because food and water just can help them to survive. But if we give them basics of agricultural products, it will help them to make their own thing. Thus, it is important that we stop giving aids. Thanks, everyone.
Which person is it now?
Person 3, or sorry, 6, sorry, 6. Go ahead, whenever you're ready.
She's the one.
Oh, yes, right.
So poverty, as Sasha said, is a huge problem that affects 8% of the entire world population, but is most likely to be found in developing countries. We can solve the entire problem, but we can alleviate it. Wealth countries should invest money, not give them easily. According with UNU.edu, people in developing countries are most likely to have less opportunities than people in developed countries. Developing countries don't have a good economy and a good system to manage the money that it's like given to them. So that's why developed countries needs to invest the aid in, like Cheyenne said, in fair trade products and like farms and everything. But like they should invest, not give them money, and teach people how to like management their own business. Investing the money, you give more chances and more like opportunities to those people that everybody deserves. That's it.
Okay, so to conclude this debate, I would say that there's no point of giving aids to poor countries from wealthy countries, unless you want poor countries to be on your political side, or I actually agree that wealthy countries might want to give aid to poor countries if after hazards or big after natural hazards or disasters. Instead of wealthy nations giving aid to poorer countries, I believe that they should invest in medicine. They should believe in medicines. There are so many problems in our world, and so many people who die from many diseases. And exploring the sea, stopping climate change, and reduce many fossil fuels around the world. So countries need to stop because it's taking too much time. For example, China been giving aid to Cambodia since 2004, which is 14 years, and there not that many progress happened economically or socially. So I believe that wealthy countries should not give aid to poor countries because there's no point at all. Thank you very much.
Great, sir. Let's finish up with last person, Chen.
So imagine this. What if someone asks you for help? Would you just do it for them, or you gonna give the material he need and let him do it himself? I think providing ad is the most effective way because only the native people know what they need. The foreign country, they don't know what difficulties that poor people face, and they don't know what they need. And also, like, they argue that corruption is a potential problem. But corruption is a global issue. It happened everywhere. It's not only in poor country. You can't say that they might corruption might happen in there, so you just don't help them. And there are a great amount of people live under poverty. They are intelligent. Some of them are even educated. The reason why they stuck in there because they have lack of opportunity. If they can't have a decent job after they graduate, I mean, what's the point for build school for them? Providing ad is not just like giving money to the beggar. It's like you are giving them hope.
So, question to Parasite and Cheyenne. Are you against aid or not? Because you were saying like we should developing countries should give like medicine. You said something about there are many ways to help countries. So are you for aid? Because aid is not just giving you money.
That's the situation. We believe developed countries can give aid if they go